Patriots Day or imperial propaganda. Unmasking Ethiopia's forgotten heroes. History is not a weapon, it's a mirror. The recent interview aired by the Ethiopian Broadcasting Corporation, EBC, on May 5, 2025, for Patriots Day, with military historian Talahan Tassif glorifies a narrow narrative of heroism and unity. While honoring the resistance against Italian fascism is valid, the script repeats the same mythologized history that has long been used to maintain state power and erase the realities of the diverse peoples in the empire now called Ethiopia. In a now iconic 1991 televised debate, Melis Zenawi posed a piercing question that still echoes today. What does the Axum monument mean for the Wolaita? And without hesitation, he answered himself, nothing. That moment exposed a truth long buried under the weight of the so-called 3,000 years of history, myth, a narrative crafted to glorify one empire while erasing the equally rich and sovereign histories of other nations and nationalities in Ethiopia. The Oromo, Wolaita, Sidama, Somali, and dozens more did not trace their identity through Aksumite ruins or Solomonic myths. They had their own civilizations, calendars, governance systems, and spiritual traditions. The myth doesn't unite, it silences. It doesn't celebrate diversity, it imposes hierarchy. Recognizing that truth isn't division, it's the foundation of genuine coexistence. The root of the problem, as boldly claimed by Ethiopia's nations and nationalities, are the followings: 1. A name not ours, Ethiopia, and Habesha as foreign labels. The name Ethiopia is not native. It is a Greek word, Ethiopia, meaning land of burnt faces. It was never used by the indigenous people of the Horn of Africa to refer to themselves. The imperial state adopted it for international legitimacy, not for inclusiveness. Likewise, the term Habesha, an Arabic label, historically described northern highland Christian elites, excluding Oromo, Sidama, Somali, Agaw, Wolaita, Afar, and others. It was never meant to include the full spectrum of nations and nationalities forcibly brought into the empire. To this day, millions reject being called Ethiopian or Habesha, not because they hate unity, but because these terms are symbols of imperial domination, not collective identity. 2. The 3,000-year myth, a national lie. The 3,000-year history so proudly cited in the interview is not a shared legacy. It is a constructed myth that glorifies a linear northern, Christian, Semitic legacy while erasing the histories of the Oromo, Sidama, Hadea, Agaw, and others. The truth is this: the modern Ethiopian empire was built in the late 19th century, mainly by Emperor Menelik II, through brutal military campaigns, mass land confiscation, slave raids, and forced assimilation. It is reasonable, and historically accurate, to assume that the modern Ethiopian state is only around 136 years old, as of 2025, because the formation of a centralized, multi-nations empire resembling a modern nation-state began with the imperial conquests of Emperor Menelik II, particularly after the Battle of Adwa in 1896. The empire as we know it today is just 136 years old, not 3,000. The supposed unity it boasts was never voluntary. 3. Who resisted fascism? Not just the emperor. While the EBC interview credits Emperor Haile Selassie with strategic leadership during the Italian invasion, it omits this. He fled to the UK in 1936, leaving behind a country ravaged by occupation. The real resistance was carried out by Arbenic Patriots, like Oromo, Sidama, and other horse-riding warriors who never had a microphone, a crown, or an international podium. The emperor returned in 1941 with British guns, not grassroots glory. And shortly after, he crushed internal uprisings, including the Woyane Rebellion in Tigray, 1943, and the Bale Oromo Rebellion, 1963-70, proving that post-fascist Ethiopia was not free, just under new management. 4. From fascism to internal wars, Ethiopia's bloody timeline. Since 1941, Ethiopia has not known peace. Instead, it has endured at least 12 major wars, mostly internal. 1. Woyane Rebellion, 1943. 2. Bale Oromo Resistance, 1963-70. 3. Eritrean War of Independence, 1961-1991. 4. Ethiopian Civil War, 1974-1991. 5. Oromo Liberation Struggle, 1974 to present. 6. Agaw War, 1977–78. 7. Ethiopian-Somali Border War, 1982. 8. Eritrean-Ethiopian War, 1998–2000. 9. Gedeo-Guji Clashes, 1995–2018. 10. Benishangul-Gumuz Conflict, 2019–2022. 11. Tigray War, 2020–2022. 12. Fano Insurgency, 2021 to present. This isn't unity. This is the cracking foundation of a broken empire, maintained by force, myth, and manufactured consent. 5. Amhara identity and the colonial legacy. The very idea of an Amhara region is a modern invention, crafted not by history, but by politics. There was no such thing as a unified Amhara identity by blood or culture. What we now call Amhara was historically a linguistic and administrative label, not a nation. Amharic itself was the language of Menelik's conquering army, not the shared heritage of one ethnic group. The so-called Amhara region was created after 1995 under Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, not to reflect cultural realities, but to honor his Amharic-speaking battlefield allies and suppress the voices of other nations in the region such as the Agaw, Kement, and Oromo. It was a reward and a silencer, not a recognition of organic identity. Truth matters. And only by exposing these political fabrications can the nations and nationalities of Ethiopia reclaim their stolen voices. It consolidated power for one elite group while covering up the Oromo identity of regions like Wollo and erasing Oromo ancestry in Gondar and Gojjam. These places were Oromo-speaking, Oromo-settled areas long before Amharization under Menelik and Haile Selassie. Today's tensions in the empire aren't new. They're the aftershocks of a century of forced assimilation and historical erasure. 6. The PP regime, wearing the crown of the past. The current Prosperity Party regime, led by Abiy Ahmed, inherited not just state power, but the same delusions, the myth of eternal unity, the suppression of self-determination, the glorification of imperial figures, the silencing of Oromo, Sidama, Agaw, and others who demand freedom. What we see today in Oromia is not law enforcement, it's a war of imperial continuation. 7. A final call, break the myth. Embrace the truth. End the war. We cannot build peace on Greek names, Arabic identities, imperial myths, or forced unity. We must confront the truth. Ethiopia was built through violence, not consent. The 3,000-year story is a lie. Unity cannot be imposed, it must be chosen. Real heroes rode horses from Wollo, RC, Barana, Sidama, not just thrones from Shewa. It is time to break the chain of empire, not out of hate, but out of hope. It is time to end the war in Oromia, recognize all peoples equally, and reclaim our stories, our identities, and our future. Only when truth replaces myth, and when consent replaces conquest, can the nations and nationalities in Ethiopia finally breathe the air of freedom. They were never born to serve an empire. They were born to shape their own future. Subscribe, share, and stand with the truth, because freedom begins with awareness.